How many four-letter words can I use on that?
Trying to switch to a double. Cheddar is driving. Nothing yet. Takedown. Michael Cheddar.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
Hale trying to stick him. He does. Maximus Hale the fall.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, and with me today is Missouri head coach Brian Smith. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know it's been a busy summer for you guys and pretty much everyone around the college wrestling world gearing up for, the Olympics, just training for other international tournaments as well. But I got to start out, what's the offseason been like for you guys coming off another successful season and just gearing up for the fall and the winter coming up here in 2024?
Yeah, it's been fun. We've got the whole team, I think 37 or 38 guys here all summer, training, lifting, doing all sorts of stuff. So just we brought in 8 freshmen, so they get to become a part of the culture and getting them dialed in on how we do things and how we live. And so it's just been a really good summer, getting to know everybody and bringing them together. But just working on small details of things we got to grow and get better at. So I think that's the biggest thing, just making improvements.
You guys are going to bring in the number 7 overall recruiting class, according to Intermat, for the class of 2024. We'll dive into that in a little bit. I wanted to switch gears a little bit real quick for some of the guys that are going to be veterans in your lineup and guys that are coming back. And I'll start with Keegan O'Toole. I know he's one of the more dominant, more popular wrestlers around the entire college wrestling scene, 2-time national champion, took 3rd last year. Didn't compete in the Olympic trials. He was a little bit banged up. I just want to start out, what's his recovery been like? How's he doing? And how's he looking ahead to his final year with Missouri?
He's training hard, and he's looking to, he's trying to make the off weight for the world team in September, I think it is, the date of it. So he's moving up to whatever the weight is. It's probably 174 pounds or whatever the weight may be. He's going to train for that and try and make the world team for I think it's in October. So he's training hard. He's healthy again. I don't know if he's exactly 100%, but he's in a good place right now.
Seems like nobody's ever really 100%, especially when you're training year round. You mentioned him going up in weight for the world championships and trying to make that team. I got to imagine the plan is for him to go 174 for the collegiate season this coming year.
That is his plan. He's going to move up a weight. He's probably weighing in the mid 80s right now, and he's not fat. He's lean, lifting hard, doing all the right things, and he likes to eat too. So I remember when he first came in, he was wrestling at 57 for the first month, but was miserable because he had, he was missing some meals here and there. So we made him go 65. He ends up taking 3rd that year too, and was much happier at 165. And I think just over the years, he's just developed and grown a little bit more. And so I think this is a good fit, and it's a good fit for us, with sliding Cam Steed in at 165.
Mm-hmm. You look at that lineup as a whole, and everyone's going to look at O'Toole and obviously his rivalry with David Carr over the last few years and what Keegan's brought to the table. And I talked to him, I think it was the other year after he won his 2nd national title. And I was curious about his reaction to this past tournament because he was really humble even after winning his 2nd title. He wasn't a brash kid where he's like, yeah, I won 2. I'm going to go for 3 and 4 and I'm going to dominate. He just takes it one match at a time. And I really appreciated that. Then you go back to this year where, everyone loves the rivalry with David Carr. He ends up winning the national title this past season. But what was Keegan's mindset? I know, and again, the Olympic trials, I'm sure he wanted to do, but because of the injury, he had to sit out. But what was his mentality like after Kansas City this year, especially wrestling so much closer to home for this tournament, but not getting to the mountaintop this time around?
Just, what do I need to do to get better? He's always been that way. I remember when he lost his freshman year in the quarterfinals and I thought he'd be just devastated, and I didn't know if he was going to come back an All-American being a true freshman, comes back and takes 3rd, but just warming up before his All-American round match and just his mindset. And it was the same thing, came off the mat and said, I stopped wrestling, I shouldn't have, and he knew what he did wrong and goes into the next couple matches, gets the wins, takes 3rd. Obviously, very disappointed that he wasn't a national champ. That was his goal. But his mindset is just, what I got to grow from this and get better. And he's been working and getting better. It's just amazing coming up to me at least once or twice a week. Hey, coach, look at this, what I'm working on now, this new thing that I'm working on and growing and getting better. So he's just a fun kid to coach.
Certainly seems like, and obviously I can see him on the back wall right there. Some of the other legends of Missouri, including Ben Askren, who was a two-time national champion. I'll ask you a little bit more about him in a second, of course. But speaking with the guys that are here right now, Rocky Elam is back as well, All-American for you guys, 197. I believe Zach is done at heavyweight. So when you look at what Rocky brings to the table for those upper weights, specifically with Keegan going up to 174 as well, what does Rocky bring to the table this coming season as well?
Well, he's All-American 4 times, so he's, like Keegan, that, you have two guys that are 4-time All-Americans. I'm not probably going to have that too often again in my career as a coach because of COVID allowing that extra season. But, when you return talented kids like that, both of them being gold medalists at world competition, the experience they bring, just the knowledge of having to come into a practice room and how to train and do things right, how to live it right outside the room. It gives us a very mature team with some great guys to lead the way with all these young guys coming in.
When you talk about that veteran leadership from obviously guys like Keegan and Rocky, who we just talked about, the new recruiting class coming in, then you mentioned how you're sliding some other guys into some other weights, and it's like a mix of veterans and young guys for you guys this coming season. How do you like that balance? I know you guys have been highly competitive when it comes to competing for team trophies. You've had lots of veterans and young guys seemingly come out of nowhere, but now you have that nice fine mix this year, maybe better compared to other years where Keegan and Rocky up top and young guys down below. I know Noah Certain is back as well. He's a veteran. What's that mix like going into this new season?
Well, I do believe it's a very mature team. When you think of Hawks at 84, loses a 1-point match to become an All-American, and then Josh Edmond loses a crazy overtime match in the All-American round. These guys are coming back with lots of experience being to the national tournament a couple times each. Noah Certain, who's been there 4 times and, just has to get over that hump, that those 5 guys are the nucleus of this program. And then you start to put in the other guys that'll be in that lineup. There's some talent there and they're hungry. That's the thing. We hadn't finished out of the top 10 in a decade. And last year finishing 11th was not our goal. We lost a lot of tight matches at the Big 12s and the national tournament. And so the focus of the spring and the summer is overcoming those things that we have to grow and get better. And one of them's losing tight matches. We got to find ways to win them. We win those couple All-American matches, and Keegan wins that tight match in the semis. The difference, we've been 11th to like 3rd or 4th. It was that tight, the team race. So, and I think it's going to be that way the rest of the next, for a long time now with the how strong it is with the top 10 or 12 teams in the country. There's a lot of depth at those schools, and I see the NCAA tournament is about winning those matches, and we have to do better.
Being one of the top programs in the country, I can easily see I don't want to call it maybe it is disappointing where you go from 11, maybe it's 3rd or 4th down to 11 just based on maybe 3 results that could have went the other way based on 1 or 2 points. So when you talk about getting over that hump with some guys trying to become All-Americans and also those tight matches where you lose by a point, maybe 2 or 3 points, what do you specifically work on in the wrestling room? Is it mental as well, as far as what you have to do for what these wrestlers have to do to get over that hump and to say, all right, I'm down 5-3 in the 3rd period. How do you get that last takedown? What do you specifically work on with your guys throughout the offseason when it comes to those situations?
It's just the little things. I mean, it's little details of what they're getting beat with, whether a person's getting to their leg too often, or if it's the sets they're using. Is it the 2nd or 3rd of shots that they're not getting to score more? Why are they not getting off the bot? Whatever it may be, those little things that each individual is working with coaches and getting better. But it is mental. It is mental. You have to find a way to get through those tough matches and find a way to win. And it's knowing your identity. I think and sticking with that through matches. And when you get in that tight match and that tight situation, knowing that this is what I'm going to win with, and I believe in it, and I practice it that way, and I've got myself exhausted in the practice room to make it happen. And you go out there and you compete, and you make it happen in the competition. But mental is a big part. We do Monday we call them mental Mondays, and we have those every Monday, but it's all through the week, just talking about things and relating it to how you can be successful, not only just on the mat, but in other things in life. But when they start to live constantly their whole life that way, then they're prepared and they walk out there and they're ready to go and expect to win.
Is it almost like a weight lifted off their shoulders? Because when you look at, I mean, for people who don't know, the NCAA tournament, those 3 days in March, it's some of the more high pressure packed situations for maybe any wrestling competition or tournament in the world when it comes to international, high school, college. That to me is the pressure cooker for all these guys. When you talk about those mental Mondays and just relieving, I guess maybe it's stress or maybe it's worries about it. Do you feel like your guys are almost lighter on their feet when they come out of those sessions?
I think what you're doing is, a lot of people will always give the, sport is so mental and this and that, but it is physical. It's a lot of physical, but the mental part does come in. And I think we go in the weight room and we train our muscles. So we're doing lifts to strengthen our muscles in different areas to get ready for competition. We train in the wrestling room with techniques, but a lot of times we forget about that. We have to train the mind, and that's so important. That there are skills you can learn on, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's the way you're thinking, your mindset, that I'm having trouble in the practice room. It's adversity. How am I going to get through that adversity? How am I going to move step to step? And how am I thinking right? A lot of kids come in and get down on themselves, and they get negative thoughts. They let those negative thoughts come in their head. You got to teach them how not to do that. So it's a process, just like the weight room is, just like the practice room. Mental preparation is something that has to be taught, and they just don't do it. You're just not born with a growth mindset and all that. It has to be taught in the practice room.
Yeah, brain
or
is
the
a muscle.
classroom, wherever we're having the talks.
Right. Yeah, the brain is a muscle, just like just like your
have to
shoulders,
train
your legs, everything else. Yeah. So I wanted to switch gears to the guys that are coming in. As you mentioned already, you have a very mature team, mix of veterans, mix of young guys. The freshmen coming in, highly touted, number 7 overall recruiting class by Intermat, as I alluded to before. Aiden Sinclair is the top recruit for you guys. He's number 3 overall on the big board. 184-pounder, looks like he's an upper weight type of guy. Wisconsin native, and I'll get into Ben Askren in a second, but just in general, talk about this recruiting class and what, again, it's not just Sinclair, it's a bunch of guys, but this seems like it's one of the better recruiting classes you guys have had in a couple of years, where I believe Intermat's side of this, where you guys kind of go in waves where you get a bigger class, you get a smaller class, and this seems to be one of those highly ranked bigger classes coming in for your Tigers.
Yeah, and it's talented. You have some, with Roller and Gage Walker, 2 really talented kids out of Oklahoma. Mac Mauger out of Idaho has won a ton of titles. Aiden, of course, was one of the first to commit to us, and has the background of Askren, so he has some influence of Missouri with Max and Ben and Josh Wagner, all the guys running the academies up there. But we go up there a bunch, but got to know Aiden and just, sold him on the culture. And my conversations with Aiden were really interesting because he's very bright young man. And I think on one of my recruiting talks, we talked about his homework with Shakespeare. And my wife asked me when I hung up the phone, who the heck were you just talking to about on Shakespeare for 20 minutes? I said, it's Aiden Sinclair from Wisconsin. And when she got to meet him, Aiden is the most outgoing, just question-filled, like every day in the practice room. It's almost become like a joke. Aiden's got his hand up. He's asking questions. Why? So what if this happens? Or why are we doing it this way? And I love it. I told him he's the Einstein, he's always asking questions, and that's why he figures things out. And it's a big part of his success. I did warn him that he may get on a limit some days if I'm in a hurry, that I'm going to limit his questions to maybe 4 or 5, but he makes it fun because he literally loves life. But when he's in the practice room, just the joy he brings with how he enjoys learning wrestling. and wants to get better. So he's a fun kid, and he'll be the leader of that group, because of that outgoing personality too, that he's a special young man that'll guide those other 7, 8, 9 freshmen that we have coming in. And, hopefully they'll take on that personality that he has, or that ability to want to learn like that with questions.
I was actually just about to ask that because, he mentioned how intelligent he is, and, maybe he's not going to teach everybody Shakespeare or reference Shakespeare questions in the room, but because he's that outgoing already, and he already is well-spoken as a, 17, 18-year-old kid by the time he starts college wrestling, that influence on the young guys, not only will it influence them, do you think that can also influence the older guys, maybe like Keegan and as well as Rocky, and maybe give them a new perspective as they go into their final seasons?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I've already seen it in the summer, just him asking questions, and of course Keegan or Rocky and those guys just grabbing them and saying, well, here's an answer to your question. And they're starting to ask questions too. And it just kind of permeates through the room that learning is a good thing. And I never want to shut that down. I want guys to have that mentality. So I love it that's part of the reason we wanted him so badly to be a Tiger, is because of his personality and his ability to want to learn.
I wanted to stick with the Askren point here because, again, I mean, he's very prominent when it comes to Missouri wrestling. He's right above your left shoulder, as I see in your background right there. But with his Askren Wrestling Academy, and obviously his brother Max, who was a Mizzou legend as well.
Yep.
When you talk about that pipeline and that influence, it's up in Wisconsin, but it's really not that far of a trip based on where you guys are. What's that meant to your program, knowing that he put this new era of wrestling, as a lot of people like to credit him for, the funk stuff and just kind of being more outspoken and not as rigid. And obviously he had a very successful MMA career across multiple organizations. What's he meant as a spokesperson, as a recruiting pipeline for Missouri, and just in general, just to maybe bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, I mean, Ben and Max, Josh Wagner, another one up there coaching one of the academies, all wrestled for me. So really proud of what they're doing. Ben just got the USA developmental coach, and deservedly. I think Max had gotten it maybe last year or the year before. What they're doing in their coaching is amazing. And I think it's not just technique they're teaching. It's the approach the young men are taking, young men and women, the success they're having. And a lot of it is the mental side of what they teach in the practice room, and just how to approach learning and how to approach sport and competition. It's and just even the way they deal with the parents in the club, and not being overbearing and keeping them out of the room and letting the kids. I walked by a group of Askren kids one time in a major tournament, and there was like 10 or 15 of them all sitting there, and the parents on the outside of it, and they're playing cards and having fun, doing things together. I don't think there was a kid on their phone, and they were just enjoying each other at a tournament. And then when a kid got up, the whole group would get up and watch them wrestle and cheering them on. And it's just the culture they have created there is special. And those kids really do enjoy wrestling and learning wrestling. And I see it. When I recruit a kid from that academy, I know through the conversations that they are a growth mentality. They're always learning, because I'll ask them, what are you learning? And they'll say, here's what I'm working on. And they can break it down, and the why they're learning it, and why it's going to be helpful to them. And just some of the things that then some of the stories Ben's teaching them through stories, what they're learning through Mental Mondays and that type of thing. It's just a joy to coach those kids. And we do have and Ben's been, for our program, been great. He's still involved, and anytime he comes to town, I let him run a practice, and we talk at least once a week. He just sent me his second book. He wrote his book. I wrote the foreword in his first book. And so it's just, I just finished the book, and he's got a story in the book for me, because I wrote my version of the story and he wrote his. So we are very close, and same with Max and everybody up there. And those academies, I mean, what coach wouldn't want kids? And I'm seeing that more and more throughout the country. College coaches are going to Wisconsin to get to this academy. We don't call it Wisconsin anymore. We call it Missouri North.
I like
Missouri
that.
North kids that we're getting after. So they've been good to us. When you look at, the Peyton Makos and the Keegan O'Tooles and Max and Josh and Ben. There's just so many kids, and now with Aiden coming in and Jake Stoffel coming in, we have the pipeline just continues. And it's important that what they're doing up there is the way our practices are similar. There's a lot of mindset things going on, so that's a big part of it. Ben and I will always collaborate and talk, and I love what he's doing though, what his academies are doing.
I like that a lot. Yeah, no, I like that a lot, considering the fact that you guys definitely still share or I want to say similar, mindset coaching, mental coaching as well. Just sticking with the MMA thing real quick, because obviously that's what he transitioned to after his run trying to get his run at the Olympics as well. Guys like Michael Chandler and Tyron Woodley, they were great wrestlers at Missouri. I know Chandler's still very active and whatnot. He's trying to get his Conor McGregor fight. But before I even get into that, when you talk about these guys having the pipeline to MMA at this point, you guys are almost kind of known for that at that point, with those three guys in particular, where you have superstars in MMA, but they were All-Americans or national champions at Missouri. I mean, I got to imagine for you guys, as as the Missouri Tigers, pride yourself on, you can go wrestle at a high level, you can win national titles and gold medals. You can also go fight for a living and also be a champion in fighting as well. Do you guys pride yourself on that as well?
I mean, it's just kind of happened. You'd think I was pushing it, and I watch MMA. I was going to go to Michael's fight out in Vegas, but it fell through.
Yeah.
I stay in touch with him. I mean, now if a kid does come here, he's going to be set up pretty good, because he'll have some great mentors that will help them get into the fight business, that have been through it. With those three you mentioned, you got Johnny Evelyn still out there fighting. That's a Bellator champ. So it's just, they've had great success. And I kind of hope that we're a big part of that, the way they learn to train, the way their mindsets in training and wrestling, it carries over into the MMA. And I think that success is why. But there are just also some bright individuals that, learned how to get in there and train in the different aspects that they had to do, whether it's jiu-jitsu or boxing, all those type of things that they had to learn from wrestling, but they did a great job of it and transitions very successfully.
Well, I hope you can end up going to Michael's fight at some point, whether he fights McGregor or he fights someone else, down the line.
I'm hoping something will come up, because he's getting up there in age that I want him to get his big opportunity to have that big fight. Yeah,
no doubt. I think a lot of people. I mean, I'm a big Michael Chandler guy. I think I actually have one of his shirts. He has "See You at the Top" moniker. So
when Michael fights, they're never going to be boring.
That's for sure.
It was the same way.
Yeah, he's a big showman.
It would just be 100 miles an hour, and so he makes it fun.
I love it. All right, I wanted to switch gears to the SEC a little bit. I believe you put out this clip yesterday from Commissioner Greg Sankey, because, again, Missouri and now Oklahoma, two wrestling programs that they're not in the SEC, but they're a part of universities that are now in that conference. And, it's interesting to me, because he gave a shout out to the wrestling programs for you guys as well as Oklahoma. Just what was your first reaction to that? Considering
I was sitting and eating dinner, and my son worked for football for a couple of years with Missouri, so he was listening to the media days, and Sankey's on there, and all of a sudden I hear him talking about the old Big 8 and the Oklahoma-Mizzou rivalry is back and this and that. And they also bring two wrestling programs that'll now be under the umbrella of the SEC. That's great to hear. I've had conversations with Greg Sankey when he's come to campus, and he's met the wrestlers, because we have some leaders in the athletic department. So he has meetings with various student athletes. So he's got to meet my wrestlers. He's met Keegan before and follows our program. And I've gotten in his ear. I said, man, we got to have a match on the SEC network. So we're working on that if we can have the Oklahoma-Missouri match on that SEC network. I really think the South, coming from Florida, I think the Florida, Georgias, Tennessee, Louisiana, Texas, all these schools, all these states that have wrestling but don't really have D1 programs, it would be huge. I just think that if we get that match on the SEC network, which is a big deal, if we could get it on there the one time, and he said he marked it down in his phone, so I know that's a big part of why he knows there's wrestling. I've chirped in his ear a few times, and that we got to get that match on there and see the following of the South, how many people, wrestlers and high school coaches, would watch that match and show the SEC that there is value in wrestling on TV.
I really think that's untapped potential down there, because I know I was scrolling through Twitter. I believe it was about a week ago or so. There was a petition to bring back LSU wrestling, and Kevin Jackson's probably the most noteworthy guy to go to LSU. Obviously, he didn't finish his career there, but he went to LSU, was an
I was
All-American for them.
recruited there. I met Kevin. Kevin was in his dorm room, and I was a senior in high school and was on a visit to LSU and loved it because I was from Florida and it was warm. It was a beautiful campus. Mike the Tiger was in his cage. It would have been a cool place, but something didn't click, and I ended up picking Michigan State, which I was happy about, and LSU ended up dropping it. So it's unfortunate because there were some great programs in the SEC. My high school coach, Randy Miller, was an assistant coach to the Cars at Kentucky, the University of Kentucky, and Florida had a great program back in the day. Tennessee had a really good program, and it's just unfortunate. The Melkovich brothers were coaching at Alabama and Auburn, and so it's unfortunate that the programs got dropped. But I think if we can, just by getting that shout out from Sankey gives you the little inkling of hope that, hey, we can make this happen. And you just keep hearing of different mergers and all these other things. We may pick up a few more teams, picking up in Oklahoma a few more teams, and we're not that far away from the 6 you need to make a conference, then it could happen. So I never give up hope on it. A lot of people say it's never going to happen, and I say you never know. You never know how times are going to change and how, because college athletics has changed drastically in the last 5 years with so many different things with NIL and just with all the different things coming in and conference affiliations. And so we'll see what happens. I'm excited about the future and what it holds.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you that, and obviously you're very optimistic about the future. Maybe it doesn't happen in the next couple of years, maybe 5, 7, 10 years down the line, maybe it does come to something where there's more wrestling in the South, because coming from the Northeast, I wrestled club when I was in college, and there was a bunch of Florida schools, Texas schools, all the schools in the South. They all have Division I caliber programs, but they wrestle in the NCAA, and so they wrestle at the club level and whatnot. So do you honestly think that the SEC could bring back programs like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, or any schools like that to really put the sport on a new map with that SEC branding? Now that Oklahoma wrestles in the Big 12 still, like you guys, but you're both representing SEC universities. Do you think there might be a chance that there's going to be another 4 or 5 schools to re-add it?
Right now, just with I think it's more difficult to add sports, just because of name, image, and likeness, and revenue sharing, all these things that are coming out. It's going to definitely make it more difficult to add sports, just because of the way things are trending. But I'm reading things about how they're talking about the possibility of 2 separate levels of Division I, and so we'll see what's going to happen now. But I never, when you look at the growth of women's wrestling, I'm thinking 15, 20 years ago, or when I was coaching at Cornell, we had one of the young ladies that was training with our team, and she was the only one, and she was, making world teams before they even had the Olympics. And then it started having the women's wrestling in the Olympics, and now all the college programs. And I look at all the high school programs and how it's grown. So that's been a real positive effect for wrestling, that we have the women's wrestling going on now. So when I see that, and you always say the big take on wrestling in the past was it didn't have the other side of it, like swimming or soccer, now we do. We have women's wrestling, and it's the fastest growing sport, in college. So it's very, you have that opportunity to add both. And with the growth, and I see Texas adding Tarleton, where Grant Leith, who wrestled for me, is the head coach, and he's raising money. He's got a new facility that when Texas gets that D1 program, how it's going to change the state. I think back of me growing up, down in Florida, and never seeing my first college match that I ever saw in person was my first dual meet at Michigan State. That, we didn't have the internet back then. So I didn't, I would watch some nationals for the hour they would put it on ABC or whatever it was. But I never saw a college dual meet till I got to college. And so even now, a lot of those kids down in Miami and all different things, they'll watch it on different network stuff, but they've never seen live college wrestling, a dual meet. So the influence of when they finally do get a D1 program there, and I say I believe it's going to happen, that eventually some school in Florida is going to see the value of starting it, because there's 600-700 high schools that have wrestling down there, that it's going to be hard not to succeed. You can recruit and there's talent in Florida. Then you sell a kid from Minnesota or somewhere cold and say, come take a visit in January and see it's 80 degrees. I know when I moved from upstate New York to Florida and was coming out of practice in December and January with my shirt off and just shorts on and flip-flops, there's nothing like that coming out of wrestling practice. It's awesome. And then going to Michigan State, and that ended. So I know there is that effect that you're going to be able to sell that there's good schools down there. Somebody's going to start one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so too. Just from my club days, I know Central Florida, out in Orlando, they had a huge club team, and then for that national tournament, you're allowed to qualify 2 kids per weight class, and they would go too deep at pretty much every weight. So
they had wrestling till my senior year. They dropped after my senior year in high school, because I asked the coach, why aren't I grew up some in Orlando, and I was literally 5 miles away from UCF and used to go to their camps, and I asked the head coach at the time, and he wouldn't really answer me. And then, of course, in the spring, they announced that they were going to drop it. And Stetson, another smaller Division I school, had wrestling too. So it was that year, though, in the mid 80s, or when those programs were dropping, which was unfortunate, because as a Florida kid, I got to see some of that wrestling a little bit. I never had time to go to a duel, but I got to see those camps and meet those guys that were wrestling. And Florida kids had an opportunity, a choice to go to some of those schools.
I'll tell you what, Florida wrestling, a lot of untapped potential. And just I'll leave you here with this, Coach. And I do ask everybody, and again, I appreciate your time. As far as growing the sport, I'm a big dual meet guy. I can get from the inclination that you are a big dual meet guy, considering SEC Network, Missouri, Oklahoma. I'll be all in for that, watching that on the SEC Network. I'm a big dual meet championship guy, that the sport does need it to determine the team national champion. I like the way the national tournament, the individual tournament, the way it is now, but I think the team champion should be recognized in a dual format. What's your take on that? And do you think that is a great way, or maybe a way to get the sport to expand more and be a little bit more well-known nationwide, and get, maybe raise its tier a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the dual meet. I think people that come to duels are the diehard fans, but you also get the casual fan that says, man, I want to go watch Mizzou take on Oklahoma State in the duel. It's a hour and 45 minutes to 2 hour block. You can sell the matchups the week leading up to it. There's just so many positives. And when you look at other sports, we need to grow our championships, and we have a great championship. We're not taking away the individual, but you have to have a dual championship. No matter how we have, you're not going to end the individual, but the team championship should be the dual meet championship. And I know tennis and golf and individual sports like that have shifted to team concept championships instead of individual, and it's gotten better. And all the information, the information you read about it, is they all love it, and the alumni love it, and the fan base loves it, and it's growing the sport. Wrestling has to make that commitment, because the way people view administration and TV are viewing sports is they're looking at the numbers that are watching the events. And our national championship is really difficult to grow a fan base, because when you tell them they have to watch from 9 a.m. till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, you don't know when certain people you want to watch are going to wrestle. You don't know the timing of it. It makes it very difficult. Where in a dual meet, you can say Iowa and Missouri are going to wrestle. It's going to be at 7 o'clock at night. You can go watch it at the local bar. You can go watch it at home or with friends. You turn it on at 7 o'clock. Leading up to it, days before, you can sell the personalities, the matchups, all the things that can draw interest to it and draw people to come watch it. And you're in and out in an hour and 45 minutes. There's just no doubt we are missing the boat not having it. I would argue this with people, that if you're against this, then it just doesn't make sense to me, because the dual meet has to be the focus of our sport. The individual will always be the individual national champs and all Americans. We're never going to take that away. You have to have that. But the trends of our people watching that tournament during the day have gone down.
Yeah.
The dual meets have gone up. The trend is up in people watching dual meets. We have to learn from other sports, and whether it's combine a way that, which we had years ago, we had it where we could combine the individual and the dual meet scores and do a national title that way, or just have both. And I mean, you got to remember that football is not an NCAA trophy sport.
Yeah.
When they win the national title, it isn't the national championship. It's, they're holding up a different trophy. It's not an NCAA trophy.
Yeah.
They do pretty good with that. They raise some pretty good money too, and they split the money between the teams. That we could do this separate from the NCAA if we were smart like football coaches. And I hate to say that, but if we were smart, we would just do, after the season, do the dual meet championships for the next couple of weeks and get it approved and have it. And if the NCAA wants to have it, they could do both. When people say they won't have it, they would have it if it's making money.
Yeah.
And if we could show that it's going to make money with filling arenas and people watching it on TV, the NCAA would want to back it and have it and allow us to have 2 championships.
I like that perspective a lot, considering, it's college football playoff. It's not the NCAA football playoff. It's the college football playoff. So it could be the wrestling playoff, or however you want to call it. So, Coach, great insight. This was a blast. I really appreciated talking to you. Good luck this season. Hope to see you, if not in the season, hope to see you out in Philadelphia for NCAAs come March. I know that's a long ways away, but we'll be there before we know it. So, again, thanks for your time, Coach. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Brian Smith, Missouri wrestling head coach, with me on On3 Wrestling. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video, and, of course, check out our content at on3.com.